the state hemming in human ingenuity is not going to be a good idea when we face another one of these.
Okay, it's Saturday, April 11th, 2020. This is Barney and Clyde, Season 2, Episode 7. On this installment, we're going to talk about bad ideas that will not die, and that's price controls. And we're going to discuss whether or not the concept of price gouging is actually a good thing. Maybe someday we'll try a free market. What does it even mean when Trump says, open the country back up? We're going to introduce a new segment called Silver Linings, and we're going to discuss our favorite things about the coronavirus. And on the fine line between caring versus grandstanding, we're going to talk about what a feckless weakling Bernie Sanders is as he fades into the history books and into obscurity. Barney, back at the libation station. Good to be here.
Yes, indeed. And welcome back, everybody. Actually, I'm across the room from the actual libation station. I'm going very informal tonight. I'm behind the desk. I'm at the cockpit, if you will, the dashboard. Yeah,
the dashboard.
We're kind of loosening things up since we're in lockdown mode. This is our second lockdown mode edition. I'm wearing the same T-shirt that I did yesterday. So
that might be too.
We're kind of getting a little informal here, but welcome to Season 2, Episode 7 of BNC. I know there's a lot of long-time folks. Thank you. We've got a lot of listeners, even some subscribers, and it's just very gratifying. But there's always new folks checking us out too, and so just a real quick rundown. I don't want to bore the long timers, but Clyde is a libertarian. His heroes are people like John Stuart Mill and Ludwig von Mises and on into Murray Rothbard and people like that. And and I am a conservative. My lineage includes people like Edmund Burke and Alexis de Tocqueville and Richard M. Weaver and William F. Buckley and people like that. But there's a lot of Venn diagram overlap between those. But you will find if you dig into that all the people I just mentioned, and Clyde and I certainly place human freedom first and foremost among the things we ought to value. Mm-hmm. The primacy of human freedom is at the core of what we both value and believe in. And there are some things that fall outside of that. And once in a while, when we get into foreign policy or certain social issues, you'll see some things outside the Venn diagram overlap. But that's what we feel makes this podcast interesting is the confluence and the stuff that falls outside it. And
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think that both the movements are born out of sort of the same forefathers and born out of the same idea, like you were saying, that human freedom is the most important thing about our modern society or our Western society in general. And
actually, any society going clear back thousands of years, the human spirit withers if a person's not free, if people aren't free. Yeah. Anyway, so until the lockdown happened, we used to convene at the libation station over there across the room, and when we'd meet in the middle of the day, Clyde would bring by some interesting. He's always been very good about finding some kind of carbonated water fruit thing or some kind of tea or root beerish type thing. Yeah. When it's closer to evening time, which it is tonight, we have had a cocktail or some kind of
grown-up beverages.
Beverage with a little pizzazz to it, if you will, which is the case tonight. What are you drinking, Clyde?
I am having good old Yuengling, which is a rather...
That's ale, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lager, so it's like...
lager, okay.
The brewing process is... they have to brew it, or they have to ferment it colder. The yeast, for some reason, reacts differently when it's colder. I don't really understand the process, but it's cheap, and it's about the same price as like a Coors Light, but it's markedly better than that. It's still not a craft beer. It's not like a high quality California IPA or something like that. But it's a nice crisp beer. It's got a lot more character to it than like a Coors Light, but it falls not far above that price point. So
okay. Well, I'm having a vodka martini, and it's a generic vodka.
So.
But yeah, actually, it's kind of interesting, and I'm watching the dollars these days, as we all are. Once, just like you, I'm not going with anything real fancy.
Right.
I'm not real brand conscious. But this brand, it's called Four Freedoms Vodka, and if you read the label, it's some people that have a set of principles behind their business ethos. So anyway,
very good.
And so, welcome aboard, everybody. And as Clyde let you know about, we've got quite a lineup here. When we were talking about price points for things like lagers and vodka, and circumstances impose parameters on people's range of choices about what products they're going to buy, but it's still their choice, and the whole idea of price gouging quickly gets us off the rails from remembering that fact, doesn't it, Clyde?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, so I think it's interesting now that we're in pandemic mode. There's a lot of shortages. People are seeing shortages for the first time pretty much ever. And
sanitary wipes, toilet paper. Bunches of stuff.
Yeah, we're seeing empty shelves for really the first time in a lot of American lives. And there's a lot of calls to put price controls on things because, people are running out. And I think it's actually a good thing that stores will put some caps on how much people can buy of certain things. Like you can only get, 10 cans of beans, and you can only get one package of toilet paper, and that kind of thing. That's good because that sort of limits what one person can hoard, and then that's a voluntary situation. The person's not forced to shop there. They can go somewhere else if they feel like they're being treated unfairly. The store can try to serve their customers as best as possible, but again, that's a voluntary action, and I think that you and I would agree that that's what's important, is to keep those things voluntary. When pricing systems are forced from the top down, that's when things get kind of screwy.
Yeah.
So it's good as a consumer.
The key to what you're saying here is that it's the store's decision to limit the number of purchases.
Right.
That comes from the private organization that is making it possible for you to buy toilet paper.
Right. Which is funny because I was just in Rural King and I got some extra ammunition just to have a little extra around, and they wouldn't let me buy 3 boxes of shells. They would only allow me to buy 2. Okay. But I was buying a box of 40. I was buying 3 boxes of 40. They would only let me buy 2. They also had a box of 500. So I could have bought 2 boxes of 500, but I couldn't buy 3 boxes of 40, which is kind of funny. But again, it's not a forced situation. So when Hurricane Katrina and some other natural disasters had happened, there was a lot of what they call price gouging happening. There was an incident I remember specifically. They were calling out on the news this one convenience store owner or manager or whatever, where they had marked the price of a case of water bottles. We're talking like 24 individual 12-ounce bottles of water. Mm-hmm. And they were charging about $50 for the case. And people were losing their minds. Like in a time of need and people are short of supplies, how dare this proprietor, how dare they price gouge and just be greedy and conniving and take advantage of people in this situation. But what's people tend to overlook is that the pricing system based on the scarcity of goods is actually sort of one of the organic features of capitalism, one of the features of a free market system. If you talk about a time when resources are scarce, if the water that's normally $5 for the case, or $3 for the case even, stays at $3 or $5, the first person in the door is going to carry every single one of them out. And if it's $50, that person's going to go, I really need some water. Maybe I should just get one and see how this rolls out.
This might be a good time to reiterate old Uncle Barnes' first law of economics.
Right.
A good or service is worth what buyer and seller agree that it's worth. Period. No
Absolutely.
other entity has any business being involved in coming to that agreement. And as you were saying, yes, external circumstances impose parameters on any economic agreement. But that's always the case. I mean, the sky was partly cloudy this morning is a circumstance that we have to deal with. Everything, and so like you were saying, yes, the first people in the door will buy up, and then there's no more capital on the part of the convenience store owner to buy some more water for the folks to buy.
Right. That's
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
There's another.
Go ahead.
Well, there's another situation like what's the company? Uber. I think you drove for Uber for a little bit.
Yeah,
didn't
I
you?
was an Uber driver.
Yeah.
For a
Did
while.
you ever do surge pricing? Were you ever involved in surge pricing?
That's the only way to make money at Uber driving. When there's going to be like a wine craft beer festival or a wine festival or a sporting event or a concert or something, that's and you get the little map on your app that shows where the red hot zones are, and that's where you want to go. And get 5 times the normal fare.
Right, which and a lot of people lost their minds about that situation. About Uber's terrible and they're horrible because they don't have like one price fits all. They price based on market demand. And
those people in the red zone want rides more than the people in the vanilla white bread zones.
Well, yeah, and
they want their rides more badly up in the red zone.
And so there's more demand for rides in that zone. So if people all around the city are consuming the rides at the low price,
right,
then there's not enough of them available at the surge area. So where there's a surge in demand, there's also a surge in the price, right? So it makes perfect sense that you keep the people, that you price out too many consumers from the system, right? You have to limit the amount of people who can actually use the service in order to provide decent service to the people who are purchasing it.
Yeah. And I get so the term greed. Whenever I get in a snit with a lefty, like in some comment thread or in a personal conversation or whatever, when they bring up the term greed, I start dismissing them because greed immediately prices itself out of the marketplace.
There's a great clip. Do you want to do a Milton Friedman clip real quick?
Sure.
All right.
Love me some Milton Friedman. Let's do it.
Right, this is Milton Friedman on the Phil Donahue show, I think from the late 70s.
Okay. This ought to be great.
The maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the greed and the concentration of power within, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So,
good old Milton Friedman.
Excellent. And recently, the left of center's columnist Sally Cohn, she's made some statements lately on Twitter and I think in some columns where she's trying to throw this back in the right of center people's faces, saying those companies that are engaging in mass layoffs of their employees as we have this lockdown, they didn't have to do that. That's their choice, you know. That's what you righties are always saying. Let's back up. There are always parameters around. If there is no money to pay their wages, the alternative is to go completely out of business.
Right. And then no one's getting a paycheck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and no one, there's no possibility of being called back when we're on the other side of this, you know.
right. When the
right.
market opens back up.
Yeah,
or the country opens back up. Which makes me wonder, what do you think it means when we say open back up? Are we flipping?
No.
Are we like flipping the sign in the front of the door from closed to open?
Yeah. Is that our next segment?
Yep. I was trying to segue smoothly into it.
That's great because it's a perfect segue. So, I wrote a piece for my Substack newsletter page, which is called Precipice, the other day, called the virus is impervious to arbitrary dates for opening back up. And I've posted it at our Barney and Clyde Facebook page, and I encourage you to read it. I also today did my homework on Gibbons versus Ogden, an 1824 Supreme Court decision that pretty much made it clear for all time that commerce within a state gets to be the terms for it, the conditions under which it's going to happen, get to be decided by that state, and the federal level has nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. And let's start there. It was the Supreme Court of the United States held that the power to regulate interstate commerce, granted to Commerce by the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, encompassed the power to regulate navigation. It was all about these two guys, these two hotshot businessmen in the early 1800s, Robert P. Livingston and Robert Fulton, wanted exclusive navigation privileges for all the waters within the jurisdiction of New York State, and then they got greedy, if you will, and wanted to expand that, and they also the two of them made the acquaintance of some other people, such as former New Jersey Governor Aaron Ogden, and a guy who owned some steamboats, and he was a Southern planter and some other things, attorney and so forth, a guy named Thomas Gibbons, and I won't bore you with I won't get in the weeds on the details of the case, but the point, the upshot, what the Supreme Court decided when it bubbled up to that level was that Congress has the right to regulate interstate commerce.
Okay.
Now, a few things here. One, the very stable genius, that is Donald Trump, our president. Is shooting off his mouth a whole lot lately about when we're going to open the economy back up. It can be shown that he can't do that. He can't do that. I mean, a number of things about what we're undergoing are unprecedented. That's true. And a number of things about constitutional law are being tested. But it's pretty darn well established that if we're going to decide anything about this on the federal level, it's the legislative branch. We're talking about some basic issues of clear lines of demarcation between the three branches of the federal government, and Congress has to pass legislation to do anything that's going to open the economy back up. Well, that's how it's supposed to work. Of course, then there's this whole business of how progressivism has eroded all that over the last 100 years. Well, with the setting up of federal agencies staffed by pointy-headed experts, and then they advise him, and he declares this and that. That Teddy Roosevelt and his second cousin Franklin Roosevelt and Truman and all, and then it became so taken for granted that all presidents now I'm going to declare this and that, which no, that stuff is the purview of the legislative branch.
That's my question too. Is so we're asking when the economy opens back up, and we assume that we're going to get that cue from the top. And what kills me is that no one is questioning the authority from centralized government at the federal level and even at the state level for them to say yes or no, you can or cannot transact.
Yeah, the whole and the media is just like bought into this. What is Trump gonna decide? Because he said the other day to a presser, that over Easter weekend he was going to have to make the most important decision of his life. Why the hell is it his decision?
Right.
And because that's another level of this is we were talking about the three branches of the federal government. There's also the business about federal on down. There's state level and municipal level, and that's the federal stuff. Those are only guidelines. Social distancing on the federal talk about social distancing is only on the level of guidelines.
Right.
The states and municipalities are the only ones that have any power to say, we're going to pass an ordinance on the municipal level or a law on the state level to make you close down your business until this date and that kind of stuff.
How is that possible that they have the right to do that even at the state and municipality level? Like how in the world can they say to again, back to old Uncle Barnes' first law of economics. Like to tell one person who thinks that it's worthwhile to transact and another person who are doing absolutely nothing violent and purely cooperatively, who are they to tell them not to do that?
And this is a tough one. This is really a tough one, Clyde. And one answer to your question might be go look at the little computer simulations of a person coughing in a supermarket and how it floats 3 aisles over within 30 seconds. This is unprecedented. We've never been through anything like this.
We've been through a lot like this. We've been through the climate change models that were all wrong over and over again. The models are wrong, they're wrong, they keep being wrong. And they've revised the models like 5 times already. They're still wrong. Now, that's not to say that the virus isn't dangerous or that there's not a problem. Like the virus is a problem, the virus is dangerous, but it doesn't change the fact that even the medical communities are all saying the models are wrong. That's what models are. Models are always wrong. They're somebody had put it, I can't remember.
They're approximations at best.
I can't remember where I heard this, but somebody on a podcast or another had said models are always wrong and sometimes useful. And I think that's I think it's very well put. So that's where we're at today is that and the model starts with it's modeling the cough and it's spreading, and then zero social distancing or zero measures taken, and then you measure how you expect it to spread from there. And then as people live their lives and change their behaviors or whatever, that information changes. So if it was easy to predict the future, we'd be doing it already.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You're starting to hear noises about how Sweden is reconsidering its completely different approach from all the countries around it. Well, all the countries in the world, really. But, you know, it's Scandinavian neighbors like Norway and Sweden, and also, or Norway and Finland and Denmark and so forth. But, you know, all the countries in the world, really, everybody else is on lockdown. But Sweden said, hey, man, keep going to sidewalk cafes and keep going to work and
well,
whatever.
you know, I get that to some
we're
degree.
starting to see that maybe they're starting to reconsider that. But
I saw that. But however, and I would reconsider that again. I mean, I personally have some respiratory issues, and it's a really good idea for me to avoid this thing. But I can voluntarily choose to do that, you know. And the idea of shutting down businesses, we're talking like we're just demolishing the idea of a mom and pop. You know what I mean? Forget about the stimulus bill that is the largest wealth transfer from the bottom to the top that's ever occurred in history. That aside, they're putting all the mom and pops through the frickin' wood chipper. They're never coming back. They're putting tons and tons of people, families, out of business forever. And the ones who are going to survive are like the Applebee's and Red Lobster, big corporate chains. You'll never see mom and pop restaurants.
And big box stores out by the interstate. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Small retail. If it was already in trouble, and now it's done. And I think you have our government to blame for that, because they're not saying that people can't transact. They're not saying that people can't do business. They're saying you can't do business, and you can't do business, and you can't do business. But all you people over here, you can do business. And I think that is a travesty. And when you go to a restaurant, some of them are trying to survive on carry out and delivery only. But if you're going to get the flu or a sickness from a restaurant, you're going to get it from the cook or your server. They go back in the back and they scratch their ass, or they wipe their nose, and they touch your plate. You know what I mean? And that's where you're going to get it. You're not getting it from, I'm not saying it's not impossible to get it from other customers, but you're not.
The last person in the whole delivery chain wearing their nice little gloves and everything and passing it to you through the window. Yeah.
Yeah. Go. You probably never get to go to a restaurant again, but if you do, everything's changed now. But before, you never saw people wearing gloves. They were never wearing gloves.
No. But,
they wash their hands. That's what they're supposed to do, to wash their hands. But they're not wearing gloves. But again, that's who's having intimate contact with you and with your food. Your server, your cook, those people. Not table 5.
Yeah.
All right. So we're getting a little close on time.
All right. What's next?
Next is Silver Linings. This is a new segment.
We got into this a little bit last episode where, for instance, on the level of education, and maybe this is one of your bullet points.
It is.
Yeah. People who are sitting at home with their kids and mom helped me with these multiplication tables or something. The parents are starting to kind of revisit things they learned as a kid and think, this is kind of cool. I'm imparting this knowledge, and maybe so some new models are emerging.
Yep. Have you noticed anything specific aside from the homeschooling thing? Have you noticed any positive aspects of coronavirus or lockdown or the new normal?
Yeah, and you and I had have had some correspondence, text message kind of things lately. I mean, I'm a freelance journalist, basically. That's basically what I do, and I'm also an educator. I'm adjunct faculty at our local community college, and both of those things have not really changed a great deal from the way I was doing them before. I mean, I'm much less able to go out and interview people for articles, but we can do what you and I are doing here. Zoom, Skype, Facebook Messenger chat, all those good technologies, making it possible for, even if I've got to do something where I need to visually see something, they can show it to me, walk around their home or their office or whatever and show things to me. So we're kind of seeing that technology is making it possible for a lot of occupations to proceed. And you with IT, there's a lot that is going on the way it did before the lockdown.
Right.
And I realize there are people who have to mine iron ore out of the ground and take it to a steel mill and turn it into steel, and then take the steel to a rolling mill, and then take that to a stamping plant, and then that whole process. Lumber, cut the lumber and take it to a construction site and all that good stuff. That's come to a halt, but there's a whole lot that is proceeding as it had been.
And I think one of the things that I put on my list of my favorite things about coronavirus is that we are getting a close look at what we actually need to do. And when we're working from home and we're schooling from home, well, it's no secret that the company that I work for is scaling back. I don't like to mention their name on the show, so I won't. But but they've scaled back some workforce hours, so they've reduced my workload by 20%. They've also reduced my pay by 20%, which I feel is very fair.
Yeah.
I would have done that before. If they would have said, "Do you want one more day off per week?" And it comes at a reduction of equal hours. Yeah, I want that. I totally want that. I would totally do that.
Yeah.
But we can see that we're getting a lot of work done with less, right? And we're also seeing that same thing at school. We're doing the work. We're doing the e-learning. We're doing all of the. We're basically doing a homeschool type curriculum, which we could buy from any purveyor of homeschooling curriculum. But we're doing it through the public school system here in our county. But we're doing it in such a smaller amount of time. My kids don't have to spend nearly as much time on their assignments when they're doing it here at home than they have to be at school, because the teachers are dealing with other kids, they're dealing with disciplinary problems, they're dealing with cafeteria garbage, they're dealing with flag worship. They've got all of these different things that they're doing that aren't actually school.
Not to mention climate alarmism, indoctrination, and identity politics garbage and all that.
Well, we still have to do their curriculum since it's public school, but you get to, they haven't. Our school hasn't been too terribly over the top with that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But that's one of the things about public school is it's all over the board, right? There's one's not equal to another. So, but anyway, we're streamlining processes and we're seeing what we really need to be able to get by, and we're getting by with a lot less. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So, do you mind if I just run through my list in general here?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so one of my
so would the listeners and viewers.
Yeah, both of them. So one of my favorite things about this whole situation, and I'm not trying to say like I like this situation. I'm not trying to be flippant about it. I am just trying to
understood, buddy.
demonstrate a silver lining, because there is some good coming out of this, and I honestly think the worst days are ahead, because the worst out of this isn't going to be the virus. The worst thing out of this is going to be the economic collapse that comes out of this. But one of the silver linings is that I'm no longer the weirdo, right? We've kept up on our prepper pantry. We keep canned beans. We keep extra rice. We keep extra rubbing alcohol. We keep emergency candles, and I also do a wild plants blog, and so I know a lot about like what wild plants can be utilized for food and for medicine and stuff like that. So I'm no longer the weirdo. Everyone wants that stuff now, Everyone is working on prepping, and I wasn't a prepper by any means. I just kept a few extra days, few extra weeks worth of stuff around, a little extra water, a little extra food, and some emergency stuff. But now everyone's doing that. People are way more aware of that, and it's pretty good to see that they're seeing that there's this apparatus of supply chain that the second it's cut off or a segment of it is cut off, everyone's in trouble. So it sucks to see them hoarding stuff, but it's nice to see them realize that they need to be a little bit more aware of their resources and taking measures to be prepared. So another thing that I think is great about coronavirus, or great about the fact that we're in this situation, is that we're finally doing something that's difficult. It kind of sounds a little perverse. We don't want difficulty in our lives, but
that's how we grow as human beings, though.
Yeah, and you think about of all the people who've ever lived throughout history. We hear tales of people pitching in during World War II, and circumventing the shortages, and people pitching in and doing things, and all that kind of stuff. People in the Depression, all of that they had to endure, and I see people doing that. I've seen.
I know, it's gratifying. It really is.
It really is. It's gratifying. It's a really good way to put it. I've seen a lot of people making the masks. My wife made a bunch of them. A bunch of her friends that she knows that have seamstress skills were doing that. Somebody who had a local business donated a whole bunch of materials for those, and people were just giving stuff away. There was a site put up on Facebook where it was just like, here's what I have, here's what I need, and just linking people with, resources. Most of it not for money. Most of it was just charitable giving. Like, hey, I've got baby wipes. You need some? Come get them.
Cool.
It was really cool. It's really, really cool to see people just pitching in and helping. Shopping for the elderly. A lot of people were volunteering to go shop for elderly people. So, it's kind of not good that you have a person going to an elderly person's house, because that's, putting them exposed to a person, but that's one person. That elderly person doesn't have to go to the store and be exposed to 100 people at once.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we talked about homeschooling. You okay for a couple more?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, let's see. We talked a little bit about this, medical regulations being lifted.
Yes.
And I think that we have the right leader right now for that situation. I'm not going to try to make the claim that Trump is doing a good job or a perfect job with this whole thing. I certainly don't know what kind of job I would do with it.
Yeah.
But I think he is. I think that we do have somebody who is skeptical.
Open to ideas.
Well, he's skeptical of regulations too, and he understands how regulations get in the way of progress. And they're breaking down the walls. They're looking at how you normally wouldn't be able to set up a clinic in a gymnasium or something, or in an extra wing of the hospital or whatever, or put more people in a room. But those are all things that get costs down, and those are all things that get more people treated. And they're proving like you can do that. You can actually do that. We can actually find ways to make that safe and effective and cost effective. And that, I think, shows people that there are too many regulations in front of actually being able to provide medical care for people.
Yes, and that's going to be a lasting thing that comes out of this, is that the state hemming in human ingenuity is not going to be a good idea when we face another one of these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things that they were doing was, okay, we have a approval process, we have a testing process, and I'm not one that's going to say we should not do thorough testing for drugs. I think we should do thorough testing for drugs.
Clinical trials and all that good stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of the smart things that the administration was doing was saying, well, go ahead and process it now as though it's passed. Right, get the production lines up and going. Start getting ready to produce this stuff. And I said administration, but I meant like the business administration, the not the Trump administration, but like the pharmaceutical companies are going. Okay, we're gonna tool our factories, and we're gonna make everything where we're gonna produce this. If it doesn't pass the testing, then we just won't produce it. And we'll take that hit. But the way to get it to market faster, the way to get people treated faster, is to get it
is to have done
produced. to do the pre-work. Yeah. So I think people are streamlining that supply chain, and I think that's a really good thing.
Yes.
Okay. I got two more.
Yeah,
and
let's hear them.
These are really short.
Okay.
I haven't heard any talk of the 12-year to certain doom climate change antics. I haven't heard that in almost a month.
For which I'm thankful.
I'm very, I think that is quite a silver lining. And
now, to be sure, no, there are a few people who are trying to tie the two together. I've seen a little bit of that, Clyde, where people are saying, they were in denial of the climate thing for so long, but once this thing hit, they realized that nature and science are,
right.
Yeah, but actually, I think mostly what you're saying is more the way.
I think that they're definitely trying to. Both sides will try to cram their agenda into this stuff, but
yeah.
But I also haven't heard anyone, and this is my favorite part, as I haven't heard anybody mention white privilege, mansplaining, or man-spreading in I don't know how long.
Yeah,
I haven't heard a peep about that garbage.
Yeah, the whole militant feminist thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that the biggest silver lining about this whole situation is that it what a time to do it. At the level of technology that we have to be able to do some work, a lot of people are able to work from home. A lot of people are able to communicate via this type of technology that we're utilizing now.
Right.
We're on the cusp of spring. It's getting warm and beautiful out. And, a lot of people's moods and, a lot of people are going to be suffering depression and anxiety. And the weather getting very nice at the same time is, it's not a cure for that, but it certainly is an offset.
Yeah, and if you bought some seeds before this came down, you can get out in your backyard and plant them and start watching stuff come up. Yeah,
yep. I've been doing a ton of gardening. So.
Yeah, I know. Hey, how are we doing time-wise?
I'm sure we're getting behind. Let me check in on it. We're almost exactly at time.
What's our next segment?
Our next segment is the fine line between caring and grandstanding.
And
while we talk about
Bernie Sanders and what kind of a legacy he might be leaving or not, the Democrat Party.
Yeah, so to me, that's really why I don't understand Bernie. Like he's I don't want to be cruel because he's an older guy, but he's at the end of his life. Human life is finite. He's close to the end of his, and I don't understand why he doesn't want to leave a better legacy. I don't understand why he doesn't, why he is so weak, and so he just rolls over to the DNC every time, and he just kisses the ass of the Democrats at large when he's not even really one of them.
Yeah, he won all the primaries up till the last couple when Biden came to the fore. Yeah.
Yeah,
it was crushing Biden and all the others.
And if he's truly what he says he is, and he's truly against this corporatocracy, and he's against these corporate handouts, and he's for the people, then why would he endorse a guy like Joe Biden? Why would he keep calling Joe Biden his friend and a good guy and all that kind of stuff? Why would he do that to Hillary Clinton? Aren't you taking these people on? You know what I mean? Aren't you trying to say that the American system isn't working for people? Is Bernie's message, and that's not just because of Republicans.
Yeah. Well, you're raising questions about the basic nature of national level politics. I suppose it's true on any level, because I felt, as a principled conservative, I felt the same way in 2016. In the depths of my heart, I wanted Ted Cruz to say, "I'll be damned if I'm ever going to endorse somebody who said those things about my wife and my father."
Mm-hmm.
He can just go piss up a rope. I am not going to say anything favorable, let alone endorse a guy like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that, it's a parallel situation. And Bernie, there's this enormous pressure from the party apparatus in either the Republicans or the Democrats to, come on, buddy, it's time to get on board.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I want to do with this segment, though, is I want to, once and for all, just point out why and how Bernie Sanders is a giant hypocrite and a feckless weakling.
Okay.
As we put his legacy to bed, he fades out of importance, and he just goes away. He's done. There's no more Bernie Sanders after this. This is the end of his career. He has disappointed everyone who believed in him, everyone who believed in his movement. He has just rolled over. It feels like the feeling of his movement reminded me a lot of the Ron Paul movement from like 2008, maybe a little bit of 2012. But like people were really excited about Ron Paul, right? And
he had an enthusiastic base, no doubt.
Right, but he got defeated by corrupt people, according to what I believe and what I think a lot of Ron Paul supporters believe. But that's the way it goes. The establishment sort of beat him. Sanders didn't even wait to get beaten. He just rolled over with the rest of them and said, give it to Biden. And it has pissed off the left. And I've been checking in with some left media outlets, and they're frickin' furious about Bernie. And I've got a clip here if we want to listen to it. It is explicit, but I want to preface this. If you don't know who Jimmy Dore is, he is a comedian and a political commentator. He's got a very, very popular show. Does a YouTube stream and podcast, and it's enormously popular. And he's a huge Bernie Sanders supporter. He's a democratic socialist. He really does make a lot of coherent points. I'm surprised that somebody who is a self-described democratic socialist is so markedly coherent that I agree with so much. But I mean, he's wrong about a lot of shit too. But he just, you can feel how angry they are with Bernie over this, and they should be. All right, let's roll this.
That Bernie Sanders is basically running Joe Biden's campaign for him, because every time he opens his mouth, he says this guy's a good guy, he's a decent guy, and he can beat Trump. And guess what the Democratic primary voter wants? The Democratic primary voter wants anybody who's decent who can beat Trump. And as soon as Bernie said that, it was over. He had forfeited his campaign. Bernie Sanders forfeited his campaign. To say it's weak that he did that is an understatement. What Bernie Sanders did was not only undermine his campaign, he undermined a whole goddamn movement when he did that. And why did he do it? Cowardice. He didn't want to lose. He didn't want to be Ralph Nader. He didn't want anybody to be mad at him. He was upset that people yelled at him and held him responsible for Hillary losing. And he's afraid of that. Because he's weak and feckless. Whatever. He's a nice guy, Bernie. He's weak and feckless and the wrong guy to lead a movement. That's for fucking sure. He just lost to a demented walking death rattle with a horrible record because Bernie wouldn't even bring up the 8 years he spent in the White House fucking people over. He wouldn't talk about his corruption. He wouldn't talk about his kids' corruption. He wouldn't talk about anything. He forfeited this race, Bernie did. And all your heart and energy you put in, you should be upset at him. You should be angry. He should fear you the next time he opens his mouth and says Joe Biden's my good friend. He should be, fuck, maybe I should stop saying that. You can't go, the establishment is corrupt and they're killing you. Hey, here comes a guy from the establishment. My good friend. Come here, buddy. You're a good guy. You can't.
So there's more to this clip and I want to play it, but I want to go back and reiterate that this entire outfit, like 4 episodes ago, had Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks on as a guest and just kissed his ass. They love the Young Turks. They love the ultra lefty left. So this is Bernie's base. These are the Bernie bots. These are the Bernie bros. These are the people who they
put their entire beings into his campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They love AOC. They've got nothing but good things to say about the whole squad most of the time. But now, I mean, just continue with this clip and listen to this vitriol.
So his message was mixed at best, schizophrenic at best, and completely undermining and forfeiting at worst. That was his campaign. He hired people to think of that shit. So here's what, and so that's why if you see me going hard at the squad or the progress, people are like, Jimmy, we get even, stop dividing the party, Jimmy. It's so divisive when you call attention to people's bad leadership. That's hurtful. And it bothers me, that I have to explain to them how this actually works. Oh no, person who I thought was smarter than me, who went to an Ivy League school, I thought you were better than me. Here's how this actually works. You're supposed to pressure your leaders. You're not supposed to apologize for them. Oh, they're almost like, all right. They just sold you out. No, Bernie got us that thing. That actually didn't happen. Michael Bennett wrote that part. Huh? That the bill was set to pass anyway? What? Yeah, it was already worked out with Mitch McConnell and the Yeah, it was already worked out. And Bernie gave a speech and what? And it was all fucking kabuki theater? Yeah. And then he told you he did something for it? Yes. And then the people in the progressive media lied for him and fucking gaslit their own audiences and told them that Bernie did something? Yes. Do you see how fucked up Bernie is and his campaign and all the progressives are? Do you see how fucked up they are? They all just shut up and went along and did nothing while Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, Steve Mnuchin, and Donald Trump cemented a corporate fucking oligarchy and an income inequality from the Gilded Age for the next generation. They did that. People still don't know how bad this is. When you
right, we talked about like the mom and pop shops that are all going to be destroyed from this. You know what I mean? And the bailout, the stimulus is all going to the top, right? Let's keep with the clip. I know this is long, but I think it's worthwhile. Let's keep going.
Drive down the busy street where all the stores, you know how they're all closed now? Well, in a year, they're all going to be bought by the 1,000 people. 1,000 people are going to own everything that they just gave $4.2 trillion to. All those stores, they're all going to be bought. They're all going to be empty or bought by people they just gave the $4.2 trillion to. Meaning equity firms, hedge funds, giant corporations. It's coming. The Great Unmasking is coming, and then people are going to go, you fucking voted for this, Bernie? You fucking did this to us, and you didn't get anything in it?
This is the best.
You didn't get fucking anything. You didn't even get health care for people with coronavirus. You didn't even get that. I didn't get anything. Did you get us, what did you get? Nothing. Well, there is $1,200, one-time $1,200 payment. And what does that do for us? Well, obviously it does nothing.
And of course, the exit question on a rant like that is, what are those people going to do come the first Tuesday in November?
Right.
What are they going to do?
Did you hear
They're going to be faced with the same binary choice that us conservatives who vehemently against Trump. It's the same. They're going to be faced with the same binary choice we are.
You know what a lot of them are going to do, though?
What?
They're going to vote for Trump.
Oh, interesting.
There was I strongly urge you and our listeners and viewers to watch the Jimmy Dore show.
Okay.
Especially the last couple episodes where he just rips his own side. He just rips them a couple of new ones. It's
right.
It's beautiful. But what
I do that on a regular basis with conservatives who still think Trump is wonderful. Yeah.
Well, what his point was, and you and I would disagree with Jimmy Dore's politics really substantially.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, his economic view.
The guy's principled.
But what he's saying is that the reason Trump is going to win is because he's out-lefting the left. Biden.
Interesting.
He was saying on his show, Biden has committed to vetoing any Medicare for All bill, right? I agree with that veto. However, the left doesn't. Like the left base, a growing left base doesn't. They want Medicare for all. That's what they want. That's the kind of politician they want, and that's the kind of issue that they want their representatives to fight for. And they won't fight for it. They won't elect those people. They won't allow them into the primary. And Bernie just lays down at the frickin' finish line. He just laid down. It's amazing. Yeah. It's such a cop out, and it's like he never wanted to be president. It's really disgusting, and I think it marks the end of the Democratic Party. It just has to. This is a huge portion of their base, and it's going to fragment, and they're just going to keep screwing these people, and they're not going to take it anymore.
Biden's obviously going to have to pick someone to his left to be his running mate. And there's a lot of talk about Kamala Harris. There has been for over a year. There was an article in Politico back in May 2019 saying that would be the, Congressional Black Caucus people are talking about how that would be the dream ticket and blah, blah, blah. He's going to have to pick somebody like her or like her to be his running mate. And then he's going to have to promise all kinds of Supreme Court appointees, criteria for them, that transgender amputee from the Pacific Islands or some damn thing, and you know what I'm saying, though?
Yeah.
And cabinet appointees and stuff. He's going to have to promise the world to the hard left.
I think he'd be fine if he just picked somebody who wasn't senile and was competent enough to steer the boat if he was unable to do it.
I'm 30 years younger than the presidential nominee, and I don't have and I have a track record of being able to talk coherently.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so anyway, at the end of this, I think it's time to stop talking about Bernie Sanders. I mean, he's done.
Yeah.
He's gone. He's
we wrote his epitaph here on BNC.
That's right, man. He got to the finish line and he gave up, and he's just there's no way he can do anything else after this. His career's over. And good frickin' riddance.
Yeah. Because he doesn't have he hates human freedom, and so that's something that kind of crosses him off our list here at BNC.
Yeah. I mean, he could redeem himself in my eyes. Like Jesus. I don't care if. I mean, I don't want state-run health care, but I'd rather see people not being blown to smithereens in other countries. Bernie is better on that than a lot of people are. I can get behind some of the stuff that Bernie's for, but this kind of stuff proves to me, that there's no way I could trust him ever to do what he says. He's just going to lay down.
And the way politics is structured in postmodern, post-America is that, once your chances for the big brass ring start to dwindle, you're expected to get on board with your party.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he did. 2 times in a row. He did it in 2016. They screwed him, and he campaigned for them. This time, they screwed him again, and he just laid down. And now he's probably going to campaign for Joe Biden. Yeah. Somebody who supported neo-Nazis in Ukraine. Literal neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
Somebody who supported George W. Bush in Iraq. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what Bernie's supporting when he endorses Joe Biden.
Yep. How we doing, buddy?
We're done, man. We got to run.
Okay. Well, listen, this is the Barney and Clyde podcast, and this is episode 7 of season 2, and we do this fortnightly and forthrightly. When not hemmed in virally, microbically, we convene at the libation station. The last couple of times we've done this remotely, but please join us and give us your feedback. Chime in at the comment thread on our Facebook page or YouTube, or send us email.
Yeah, or send us a video clip. That'd be great. We'll play it.
You bet. Yeah, this is about the Venn diagram overlap between libertarianism and conservatism, but we'd love to hear from hard lefties. Don't you folks be hesitant to chime in, and we'll give you respectful feedback on what you have to say.
Yeah, and I personally want to grow whenever possible, so I like being challenged. I know we sit here and talk about the points where we agree a lot, but I like being challenged, and I like being wrong, because that's when I grow. So if I'm wrong, let me know.
Point. Well put. All right.
Okay.
And we do this fortnightly and forthrightly, so the plan is to get together again in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, stay vigilant about your freedom.
Cheers.
Cheers.
See you in a fortnight, Barney.
You bet.
Well, that's an interesting development.